For the trade wars, tariffs through time. The year is 1773. Boston Harbor fills with the bitter aroma of tea leaves as American colonists, disguised as Mohawk Indians, dump 342 chests of British tea into the cold waters below. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just about taxation without representation. It was about tariffs, those often overlooked duties on imported goods that have shaped economies, ignited wars, and transformed nations for centuries. Tariffs, those taxes on imported goods, might seem like dry economic policy, but they've repeatedly changed the course of history. They've built industrial giants, sparked international conflicts, protected fledgling industries, and sometimes backfired spectacularly. This is their story. In ancient times, rulers understood the power of controlling trade. As early as the Roman Empire, Emperor Augustus imposed a 2 to 5% tax on goods entering imperial borders. These weren't called tariffs yet, but these portoria served the same purpose, raising revenue while protecting domestic producers. Maritime powers like Venice grew wealthy controlling Mediterranean trade routes, charging fees to merchants seeking passage to European markets. But the modern tariff story truly begins in the 17th century with mercantilism, the economic theory that nations should accumulate wealth through favorable trade balances. Colonial powers like Britain used tariffs aggressively, imposing high duties on manufactured imports while encouraging raw material exports from their colonies. The American colonies felt this sting sharply, forced to buy British manufactured goods at premium prices while selling their raw materials cheaply. After gaining independence, the newly formed United States faced an immediate question: how to fund this experimental government? Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, had an answer. In his 1791 Report on Manufactures, Hamilton advocated for tariffs that would serve two purposes: generate revenue and protect America's infant industries from established European competition. Without the continuance of those duties on manufactures which the revolution in our government found established, and without the addition of others on a few articles of more general consumption, the system would have been imperfect, Hamilton wrote. The Tariff of 1789 became America's first major piece of economic legislation, with duties averaging about 8% on imported goods. By 1816, tariffs rose to around 25%, protecting America's growing textile industry from British competition. The strategy worked. American manufacturing flourished. New England's textile mills hummed with activity, protected from cheaper British imports. In this case, tariffs succeeded brilliantly, nurturing industries until they could stand on their own. But tariffs are double-edged swords. By 1828, tensions erupted with the passage of what opponents called the Tariff of Abominations. This protective measure, with rates averaging 38%, benefited northern manufacturers but devastated the agricultural South, which relied on exporting cotton while importing manufactured goods. South Carolina politician John C. Calhoun protested, "The government has departed from its legitimate objects and one portion of the nation is sacrificed to another." His state even threatened nullification, refusing to enforce federal law, bringing America dangerously close to civil war decades before shots were fired at Fort Sumter. This highlights a crucial lesson in tariff history. Tariffs create winners and losers, often dividing regions and economic sectors against each other. The 19th century became known as the Golden Age of tariffs. Nations like Germany and the United States used protective barriers to shield their growing industries from British competition. Between 1820 and 1930, American tariffs averaged 32 to 40%, reaching as high as 60% in some periods. Behind these protective walls, American steel, railroads, and manufacturing flourished. Consider the case of steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. In 1875, protected by high tariffs on imported steel, his company could develop innovative production methods without fear of being undersold by foreign competitors. By 1900, American steel production surpassed that of Britain, Germany, and France combined, a tariff success story. Yet across the Atlantic, Britain took the opposite approach. After repealing the protectionist Corn Laws in 1846, Britain embraced free trade, becoming the world's workshop and financial center. Both approaches, American protectionism and British free trade, succeeded during different development stages, suggesting tariffs might work best when tailored to a nation's economic circumstances. The 20th century opened with tariffs at their height, but storm clouds gathered. In 1930, as the Great Depression deepened, President Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, raising rates to nearly 60% on over 20,000 imported goods. The intention was to protect American jobs in agriculture, but the results proved catastrophic. International retaliation was swift and severe. Canada increased tariffs on 16 American products that accounted for 30% of U.S. exports to that country. European nations followed suit. Global trade collapsed by 66% between 1929 and 1934. While Smoot-Hawley didn't cause the Depression, economists widely agree it worsened and prolonged it, a spectacular tariff failure. "When goods cannot cross borders, soldiers will," observed Frederick Bastiat, and World War II's outbreak seemed to validate this warning. From the ashes of war came a new approach, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT in 1947, which evolved into the World Trade Organization in 1995. Average tariffs among developed nations fell from 40% to less than 5% over the next half-century. This new order created unprecedented global prosperity. World trade grew from $57 billion in 1947 to $18.5 trillion by 2018. Entire nations, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, transformed from poverty to prosperity through export-led growth. Meanwhile, consumers worldwide enjoyed lower prices and greater variety. The post-war consensus seemed clear. Lower tariffs benefited most nations. Yet this conclusion oversimplifies a complex picture. China's economic miracle began behind protective tariff walls that averaged 40% in the 1980s. Only after domestic industries developed did China gradually lower barriers. Similarly, Japan and South Korea protected key sectors during their development phases. The 21st century has seen a return to tariff battles. In 2018, the United States imposed 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum imports, citing national security concerns. China retaliated with tariffs on American soybeans, hitting farmers in states that supported the administration. By 2019, the average U.S. tariff rate on Chinese goods reached 21%, while Chinese tariffs on American goods averaged 25.9%. Did these modern tariffs succeed? Evidence is mixed. A 2019 study found that the costs of recent U.S. tariffs were passed almost entirely to American consumers and businesses. U.S. Steel, initially benefiting from protection, still announced plant closures and layoffs despite tariff protection. Yet some manufacturing returned to American shores, suggesting limited success in reshoring production. So when do tariffs succeed and when do they fail? History offers several lessons. First, timing matters. Temporary tariffs protecting truly infant industries, as in early America or post-war Japan, often succeed. But permanent protection typically leads to inefficiency and higher consumer costs. Second, retaliation changes the equation. Unilateral tariffs may benefit a country, but trade wars harm all participants, as Smoot-Hawley demonstrated catastrophically. Third, economic conditions determine outcomes. During development phases, strategic tariffs can nurture domestic industries. For advanced economies, open trade typically provides greater benefits through efficiency and innovation. Finally, distribution effects determine political sustainability. Even beneficial tariffs create losers as well as winners, generating political tension that can overwhelm economic logic. As we face new challenges, climate change, technological disruption, pandemic recovery, tariffs remain in policymakers' toolkits. Their history suggests neither blanket protectionism nor complete free trade offers perfect solutions. Rather, successful trade policy requires careful calibration to economic conditions, strategic goals, and domestic political realities. The story of tariffs is not finished. It continues to be written in negotiating rooms, legislative chambers, and busy ports worldwide, a complex economic tale with profound human consequences. As we navigate our increasingly interconnected world, Understanding Tariff's past successes and failures becomes not just historically interesting, but essential for our shared prosperity.